Hey you guys, welcome back. I'm Anike, and this is our second video in our lessons on the Founding Fathers. So last week we talked about Abraham. Now, Abraham had one son, his name was Isaac, and then Isaac had two sons named Esau and Jacob. And this week we're going to be talking specifically about Jacob. Now, I know a lot of you guys have really been struggling with a variety of different things. And there's also some of you who are feeling great. Life feels like it's going great, but your relationship with God is dying. And I really think the Lord has a word for you guys tonight. And my job is I just want to step back and let Him speak to you guys. So, before we do jump into the lesson, take a couple minutes and talk about these questions with your group. All right, so the first passage we have is Genesis 32, 22 through 32. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream with everything else he had. And Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket. And Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. And then he said, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And then he said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." So I had to read this passage several times because this passage, quite honestly, made God look like a pushover. Like, it seems like God and Jacob are like equally struggling and wrestling, and we don't know who's going to win. But let's look at verse 25 one more time. It says, "When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him." Friends, this is no weak God that Jacob wrestled with. All God did was touch Jacob's hip socket, and it was put out of joint. God just dislocated his hip with one single touch. The Lord is all-powerful and holy. I want you guys to remember that. You guys, God knew Jacob's sin and badness. God knew that Jacob had stolen his brother's birthright, lied to his dad. Jacob did a lot of sinful things. And yet, Jacob has this close encounter with him. The Lord is powerful and holy. Imagine this moment. Sinful, weak Jacob wrestling with this almighty, powerful God. Surely, Jacob should lose. Surely Jacob should even be destroyed or killed. The Lord is powerful and holy. He knows my sin. He knows your sin. But see, this leaves a huge problem because God is holy and cannot be in the presence of sin. We should die in His presence. In the Old Testament, there's this theme of being face to face with God is the most amazing, blessed thing that could happen to a person. But the problem is, if sinful man comes into the presence of holy God, what's going to happen? Sinful man is going to die. So why does Jacob get to come into the presence of a holy God and not just even come close to him, but wrestle with him physically? How can he do that and live? How can we be with a holy God if we're inherently sinful? Take some time to talk about these questions with your group. So what does the passage mean when it seems to suggest that God and Jacob are equally matched, and not even that sinful Jacob could be in the presence of holy God? What does that mean? How could that happen? If God is all-powerful, why does God get to say, "Let me go, or day is broken"? And why does Jacob get to say, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me"? How could a sinful man stand in the presence of a perfectly holy God? That's the question I keep wondering when I read this passage. How could that happen? Certainly, if God wanted to, he could have destroyed Jacob. But the Lord is also merciful and a personal God. God came to Jacob in his sin. God came to Jacob when he was alone. God came and physically wrestles with Jacob. Do you guys see how intimate this is? That God would come down and physically wrestle with Jacob. This isn't just like an abstract story that happened. This is like a real event that happened. God came and physically wrestled with Jacob. When I was younger, my dad, I would have my dad play what I called Scar and Simba. He would be Scar and I was Simba, and we would wrestle. And I would win, but not because I won of something I did, but because my dad let me. But he would win in the sense that he had gained my heart because he had a close encounter with me. Not because he let me win did he gain my heart, but because he came and had a close encounter with me. In the same way, when God comes to us, he comes to us as a father. He wrestles us, and from the outside, it probably looks like we've won by something we did, for those of us who are Christians. But at the end of the match, at the end of the wrestling, what has really happened is that God's gained our hearts. He won the real battle. He won our hearts. And now, before we move on to the next section, take a couple minutes to talk about these questions with your group. Imagine the scene at this point. Jacob, tired, breathless, still gripping onto this man for dear life. And the man says, "Let me go, it's morning." And Jacob says, "Not until you bless me." So the man straightens up and says, "What is your name?" Jacob. So the man says, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." The Lord changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel. This is really important, you guys. After this intimate, sweaty, beautiful encounter with God, Jacob is renamed. The essence of his being is totally changed. Jacob's original name meant one who takes. Jacob's new name, Israel, means one who strives with God. What God is doing is changing the very essence of who Jacob is at this very moment. He's saying, once you were a thief, and now you're a son. He's saying, once you took, and now you receive. He's saying, once you were a sinner, and now you're a child of God. This is exactly what happened when Jesus died on the cross. When Jesus died, he took our sin and badness on himself. In exchange, he gave us his righteousness. He died and took our sin so that if we accept the free gift, we get his righteousness. You see, because he is holy God and we are sinful man and we can't be in his presence. But if we accept this gift of righteousness, we get to become children of God, even though we were once sinners. Our identity is completely changed. So we get to be in God's presence and he becomes our Father. This is the only way a person can be with God forever, is if God changes them from being one thing, a sinner, to becoming a new thing, a child of God. You guys, this past summer was really rough for me. I'll be completely honest. I had a lot of sin deep-rooted in my heart, and the Lord was not going to let me go with that, because there was a piece of glass in my heart. It was bleeding out, and I needed it surgically removed, but that's painful, and I didn't want that. So every time I was on vacation or I was away, when I was alone, the Lord ran up and just tackled me. He would not let me go until he had surgically removed every single shard of glass from my heart. And he wants your hearts too. He wants to meet you guys where you are. He's inviting you to bring your hurt and bring your sin and bring your baggage. He's inviting you to be angry with him. He's inviting you to cry with him. He's inviting you to go and wrestle with him physically. Some of you have some wrestling to do with God even now, and I would encourage you right now, just don't even finish the video, go and just find a quiet place and wrestle with God. Be alone, get everything out, scream, yell at God. He's inviting you to do that. Because at the end of the day, he just wants your heart. And once you've tired yourself out, he will say, let me go. It's morning. And you'll say, not until you fix my family problems. Not until you fix my friend problems. Not until you heal my mind. Not until you heal my past, my sin, all that I've done. And he'll say, what is your name? And after you answer, he'll say, you're no longer what you once were. If you accept this gift, you're no longer a sinner. You're my child. If you accept this free gift, you are my child. Go now, friends. Wrestle with the Lord of hosts, and he will win your hearts. I'll see you guys next week.